The Principle of Obedience, Learning from Noah. Have you ever stopped to think about why some people prosper, even when everything around them seems to be falling apart? While many people fall into despair during financial crises, economic collapses, or moments of uncertainty, there is a select group that keeps growing, moving forward, and building something solid. But is that luck? Or is there a principle behind it? What if I told you that the Bible itself reveals principles, yes, principles, that do not fail, not even in the worst crises in history? Today, you're going to discover the first of them, and maybe it's the hardest, but also the most powerful, because it doesn't depend on money or connections or luck. It depends on something much rarer: obedience. Now let me ask you honestly, would you trust a direction even when it made absolutely no sense? That is exactly what happened to Noah. Imagine the scene. The world was living its normal routine, people working, building, planning for the future, until God gave one man a completely absurd command: build an ark. But that wasn't all. There was no sign of rain, no forecast of disaster, no evidence that anything was about to happen. Even so, Noah received a massive assignment, something that required time, effort, resources, and above all, faith. Now think with me. How many people do you think believed him? How many mocked him? How many said he was wasting his time? And even so, he kept going, day after day, hammer strike after hammer strike, with no guarantees, no applause, no immediate results. And this already reveals one of the greatest secrets that almost no one talks about. The businesses that do not fail in a crisis begin long before the crisis arrives. While everyone else was distracted, Noah was preparing. While the world laughed, he was building. While nobody could see the point, he obeyed. And then the impossible happened. The rain came. And it wasn't just any rain. It was a global crisis, total, inescapable. Everything that seemed secure disappeared. Everything that seemed stable collapsed. But there was one thing that remained standing: the ark. And here is the point that can change the way you see everything. Noah's obedience became the safest business of that time. While everyone else lost everything, he preserved his life, his family, and the future of humanity. Now let me challenge you a little. What if today you are ignoring instructions that may be exactly what will save you tomorrow? What if that idea that seems strange, that path no one understands, that decision that requires courage is actually your ark? Most people only act when they see results, but biblical principles show the opposite. First, you obey. Then comes protection. Then comes provision. And here is a powerful detail. Obedience is not about understanding everything. It is about trusting, even when it makes no sense. And that goes against everything the world teaches today. Today, people want guarantees. They want security before they act. They want to see in order to believe. But in the Bible, it's the opposite. Noah did not see. He had no proof. He had no external confirmation. But he had a direction, and that was enough. Now, imagine if he had waited for the right moment. If he had said, "I'll start when I have more resources. I'll act when people believe me. I'll do it when it makes sense," he would have lost everything. And that is exactly what happens to many people today. They wait too long. They doubt too much. They procrastinate too much. And when the crisis comes, it's already too late. Now pay close attention to this. Crisis does not destroy the one who is prepared. It reveals the one who ignored the signs. And that is why the business of obedience never fails, because it does not depend on circumstances. It depends on your decision. The decision to act first, the decision to trust first, the decision to build first, even in silence, even without applause, even without understanding everything. And maybe you are in a moment like that right now, facing a difficult decision, facing an uncertain path, with something inside you saying, "Go this way." But at the same time, fear holds you back. Doubt paralyzes you. The opinions of others weigh on you. So let me tell you something with complete clarity. The obedience that seems strange today may be your salvation tomorrow. And this is only the first of the 4 biblical businesses that do not fail in a crisis. The next ones will go even deeper, and maybe even be more confronting. But before we continue, I want to invite you. If this kind of content makes sense to you, if you want to learn principles that truly work in real life, subscribe to the channel right now. Because here, we do not talk about empty theory. We talk about principles that endure through generations. The business of provision, learning from Joseph. What if I told you that there is a way to prosper precisely when everything is falling apart? Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Because normally, when we think about crisis, we think about scarcity, lack, loss, despair. But the Bible shows a completely different picture. A picture where, in the middle of the greatest economic crisis of that time, one man not only survived, he prospered in an extraordinary way. And more than that, he became the answer to the problem of an entire nation. Now let me ask you, are you preparing for abundance or just reacting to scarcity? That is the difference between those who collapse and those who grow. And no one represents this principle better than Joseph. His story begins in an unlikely way, rejected by his own brothers, sold as a slave, wronged, forgotten. If there was ever someone who had every reason to give up, it was him. But even in the middle of all that, Joseph developed something extremely rare: vision. While many people look only at the present, Joseph learned how to see the future. And that is what changed everything. When he finally had the opportunity to interpret Pharaoh's dream, he revealed something alarming. 7 years of abundance would be followed by 7 years of extreme famine. Now think about this with me. Most people would celebrate the 7 years of prosperity and ignore the rest. But Joseph did the opposite. He understood that abundance was not the end. It was preparation. And here is one of the most powerful principles you need to understand. Whoever does not prepare in times of abundance suffers in times of scarcity. Joseph did not just interpret the problem, he presented the solution. Store up during the good years in order to survive the hard years. Simple? Yes. But almost no one does it, because when everything is going well, people relax. They spend more, plan less, ignore risks, and believe it will last forever. But crisis always comes, and when it comes, it separates the prepared from the unprepared. Now look at what happens in the story. While famine spreads, while nations collapse, while people fall into despair, Egypt becomes the center of provision for the world. And Joseph, he becomes the administrator of all of it. In other words, the crisis that destroyed many positioned Joseph at the top. And that was not luck. It was strategy. It was vision. It was discipline. Now let me challenge you again. What if you are living in your season of abundance right now, but you do not even realize it? What if the money coming in today, the time you have, the opportunities showing up, are exactly the resources that will sustain you tomorrow, but you are wasting them without realizing it, without planning, without building reserves, without thinking long-term. And here comes a point that very few people like to hear. Prosperity is not about how much you make. It is about how well you manage it. Joseph did not create the abundance. It was already there. But the way he handled it is what secured the future. And that applies directly to your life today. Because there are modern-day famines happening, financial famine, emotional famine, famine of purpose, and whoever prepares becomes the solution. Now think about this. When crisis tightens, whoever has reserves leads, whoever has vision guides, whoever is prepared grows, and whoever doesn't runs after things, panics, accepts anything. Now maybe you are in a difficult season. Maybe you are already living through the scarcity. And if that is the case, pay close attention. There is still time to learn the principle. Because the secret is not only in predicting crises, but in how you respond to them. Joseph could have become bitter. He could have given up. He could have settled. But he did the opposite. He prepared himself. He acted. He took responsibility. And that changed his destiny, and the destiny of thousands of people. Now hold on to this. Crisis is not the end. Crisis is the stage where the prepared stand out, and the business of provision never fails, because it transforms abundance into security, and it transforms crisis into opportunity. But there is more, because the next principle is one that many people ignore, and because of that, they never move forward. It does not depend on money. It does not depend on position, but it can completely accelerate your results. And before I show you that, if this content is opening your mind, subscribe to the channel right now, because what you are learning here can change the way you see your entire life. Coming up next, you are going to discover the third biblical business that does not fail in a crisis, and it has the power to open doors where before none existed. The business of relationships, learning from David. Who you know may be shaping your future more than you realize. But let me ask you a direct question. Are you building connections, or just being around people? Because there is a huge difference between being surrounded by people and being connected to the right ones. And in times of crisis, that becomes even more obvious. While some people isolate themselves, burn bridges, and lose opportunities, others grow. They move forward, and they gain access to doors that simply would not open on their own. And the Bible shows this very clearly through the story of David. Before becoming king, David was just a shepherd. No status, no influence, no recognition. But he had something that few people truly value. Relationships built with truth, loyalty, and purpose. Now think about this with me. When David faced Goliath, he had no army, no armor, no war experience, but he had something invisible and extremely powerful. Reputation. He had already proven who he was, in solitude, in anonymity, behind the scenes, and that began to attract the right people. After the victory over Goliath, David's life changed completely, but not only because of the battle. It changed because of the connections that came from it. One of the most important? Jonathan, the son of King Saul, someone who, in theory, should have seen David as a threat, but he did the opposite. He became his ally, his friend, his protector. Now pay close attention to this. The right relationships shorten paths that would otherwise take years. While Saul was trying to destroy David, Jonathan was helping protect him. While many could have betrayed him, some remained loyal, and that made all the difference. Now, let me challenge you again. What if today you are neglecting connections that could transform your life? What if you are underestimating the power of a well-built relationship? Because in times of crisis, people do not do business only with companies. They do business with people they trust. And trust is not built during crisis. It is built before it. David did not start looking for allies in the moment of danger. He already had them, because he lived with integrity when no one was watching. And that is one of the biggest mistakes people make today. Many want support without ever building connection. They want help without ever having helped. They want opportunities without ever having been trustworthy. But the biblical principle is clear. You reap in relationships what you have planted over time. Now look at what happens in David's journey. Even while being pursued, even while being hunted, even while living through extremely difficult moments, he was never alone. There were always people around him, loyal men, companions in the journey, people who believed in him. And that sustained David until he reached the throne. Now think about this. How many people give up, not because they lack ability, but because they lack support? How many break down, not because they lack talent, but because they lack connection? And that is why the business of relationships never fails, because it creates an invisible network that sustains you when everything seems to be falling apart. Now maybe you are thinking, but I don't know anyone important. And here is a truth that can change the game for you. You do not need to know important people. You need to become someone important to the right people. David did not chase status. He chased purpose. And that attracted real connections. Strong connections. Connections that remained even in adversity. Now, hold on to this. In times of crisis, whoever has money survives. Whoever has strategy moves forward. But whoever has relationships prospers. Because doors open, paths appear, solutions arise, and many times through people. And here is an extremely important point. Relationship is not about self-interest. It is about value. It is about presence. It is about consistency. It is about being someone people remember when an opportunity appears. And that does not happen overnight. It is built. It takes time. It takes intention. Now tell me honestly, if a great opportunity showed up today, how many people would think of you? How many would recommend you? How many would trust you? That answer says much more about your future than any plan. And maybe that is the adjustment you need to make right now. Invest less in appearance and more in connection, less in proving and more in building. Because in the end, people open doors that effort alone cannot. And this is the third biblical business that does not fail in a crisis. But the last one is the most ignored of all, and at the same time, the most powerful. It does not depend on circumstances. It does not depend on people. It does not depend on resources. But it has the potential to multiply everything in your life. And before I reveal it to you, the business of faith, learning from Abraham. What if everything you are seeking depended on something you still have not developed? Now think with me, with complete honesty. Do you believe, even when you see absolutely nothing happening? Because here is one of the greatest truths that almost no one accepts. Most people do start, but they give up in the silence. They give up when they do not see results. They give up when they have no confirmation. They give up when everything seems stuck, and that is exactly why they never experience what is on the other side. Now let me ask you an important question. What if what is missing in your life is not opportunity, but faith? Not a superficial kind of faith, but a practical faith, an active faith, the kind that makes you act even without guarantees. And no one represents this principle better than Abraham. His story begins with a calling that was completely out of the ordinary. God simply says, "Leave your land, your household, and go to a place that I will show you." Now stop and think about the level of that. No defined destination, no map, no visible guarantee, only a promise. And even so, Abraham went, without knowing where, without understanding how, without controlling the process. Now let me ask you, how many people today would have the courage to do that, to leave their comfort zone, without having everything planned out, to let go of what feels secure for something uncertain? This is the point that separates those who live the ordinary from those who live the extraordinary. Faith is not feeling secure. Faith is moving forward even without it. And here comes a powerful detail. Abraham did not receive everything all at once. The promise took time, years, decades, moments of doubt, moments of waiting, moments when nothing seemed to be happening. And even so, he kept going. Now hold on to this, because it can change your mindset. True faith is tested over time. Anyone can believe when everything is going well, but when it takes longer, when it seems like it is never going to happen, when everything around you says, "Give up," that is where faith proves itself to be real. And this is the point where most people fail, because they want quick results. They want immediate answers. They want guarantees before they act. But the biblical principle shows something completely different. First, you believe. Then, you act. And only then. Do you see? Abraham did not see first. He believed first. And that completely changed his destiny. Now let me challenge you again. What if today you are stuck, not because you lack ability, but because you lack the faith to take the next step? What if that decision you have been postponing, that change you know you need to make, that path that scares you, is exactly what will unlock the next season of your life? But you do not act because you want certainty, you want control, you want security. And here is a direct truth. You will never have 100% certainty before you act, and whoever waits for that stays stuck. Now look at what happens with Abraham. Even in the middle of uncertainty, even in the middle of waiting, even in the middle of challenges, he becomes the father of a nation. Something that in the beginning seemed impossible, unlikely, distant, but it was fulfilled. And that reveals the last of the 4 biblical businesses that do not fail in a crisis, the business of faith. Because while everything around you is shifting, faith keeps you firm. While the circumstances change, faith keeps you moving. While others give up, faith makes you continue. And here is the most important point of all. Faith does not eliminate the crisis. It positions you above it. Now think about this. How many people break down because they lost hope? How many stop because they stopped believing? How many give up? One step before the result. And maybe you are closer than you realize, but you are tired, discouraged, unable to see a way out. So let me tell you something with complete clarity. It is not the end. It is the process. And if you keep going, if you move forward, if you trust even without seeing, you may live something that today seems impossible. And this is the conclusion of everything you have seen so far. Obedience prepares you. Provision sustains you. Relationships connect you. And faith takes you beyond. Now the final question is simple. Which one of these businesses are you neglecting today? Because the answer to that may be shaping your future. And if this content has opened your mind, if it made you reflect, if it showed you something you needed to hear, subscribe to the channel right now, because here you will keep learning principles that truly work no matter the circumstances. And more important than watching is applying, because knowledge without action changes nothing. But when you apply it, everything changes.